Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this stream, a news summary from Moscow program. As always, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments that Russian media and public is paying attention to, and hopefully you will find this episode informative and useful. And if so, dear friends, please like the video, share the video if you can on your social platforms. And leave some commentary. If you are watching during the live stream, be active in the chatter. If you are watching this video after live stream ends, please leave some commentary on any topic, dear friends. More likes and comments probably will help to deal with the algorithm. Also, dear friends, let me remind you that tomorrow we will have a traditional Sunday community chat, big community chatter, and fundraising stream. Hopefully, it will work out good. And well, if there are going to be any donations on Saturday, today also, I will count that. I will plus that to tomorrow's fundraising. Project survived this week thanks to your support and assistance, and hopefully we will survive next week. Also, to support their friends, you can use our PayPal platform, Boosty platform. You can subscribe on my Patreon page or page on Boosty, where I have extra content on regular basis. This week, for example, I believe I published 5 exclusive contents every work day. So hopefully community there is happy that I become much more active, and I'm going to continue this way. Links, by the way, to my to PayPal, Boosty, Patreon is under this video in description box, and will be in a pinned comment on YouTube after stream ends. And during the stream, because I'm streaming simultaneously on my YouTube and Rumble channels, you can use the super chat or round feature on Rumble to donate, and also to highlight any question or the topic that you want. And you can become premium subscriber on Rumble. Of course, everything counts, dear friends. All support helps me to keep this project running. So many thanks to everybody who supported and continues to support. That's been said, dear friends, a lot is going on, a lot is happening. I was hoping to have a day off today, but well, it will be difficult then to catch up if I pass on that many news that is relevant today. So therefore, without any further delay, let's start a new segment itself, after which I will join a community chatter for a little while, as I always do. And first news that I want to share, dear friends, is this report from TASS News Agency that former speaker of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, which is a parliament there, Parubiy, was killed in Lvov. Of course, sort of a breaking news for this moment. So, former speaker of the Verkhovna Rada, ex-secretary of the National Security and the Defense Council of Ukraine, Andriy Parubiy, was killed in Lvov. This was reported by the Ukrainian publication Общественные Новости, with reference to the police. And on my Telegram channel, I did share some photo and video footage, information about this incident. Allegedly, this is the person who shot 8 times, according to some reports, at Parubiy in Lvov. The shooter was disguised as a delivery man, and he approached on a sidewalk Parubiy and executed that mass murderer, basically, and terrorist that Parubiy is, of course. And I remind you, dear friends, that this personality was believed to be one of the organizers of a killing of people, Protestants, and also law enforcement officers in 2014 during their Western orchestrated Maidan and their subsequent coup d'etat. And let me show you a video, by the way, that basically at least partially confirms these reports. Just look at this, by the way. This video was made here.
Загвинтівки, хлопці, що це таке у вас? Розкажіть.
Це у нас труби, музикальні інструменти.
Ну так, давай.
and they believe that Bush was engaged in sniping, which was
Привет, Тамаш.
very Parubiy in a circle, and this was used then, and this is a close-up picture, and this shooting then was used as justification for a coup d'etat that happened in Kiev in 2014. So definitely scum of humanity, this creature, Parubiy, and minus one disgrace of humanity, obviously. Good news, I will say, for everybody, for all whole of humanity, by the way. Less such a scum will exist in this planet, then better for everybody, of course. Although Kiev regime began straight away, some representatives of this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky began to blame Russia straight away, by the way, although if Russian secret services were some way involved in this operation, well, good. All the criminals, all the mass murderers, whoever committed any crime against Russian people and people in general should be punished, and life will find the ways to punish them. But based on information that is available right now, I doubt that person who killed the Parubiy had any special training or was a member of Russian secret services, because why would he then shot 8 times? I mean, it's more like amateur worker, right? Because professionals, they might use like 3 shots, 2 in the body, 1 in the head. That's it. Maybe not even 2. 1 in the body to stop the target, and 1 in the head to make sure that target is eliminated. 8 times to shot someone, it's just too much, really. So therefore, I think this is some internal confrontation, result of internal confrontation that is going on Kiev-controlled territory. But yet again, they're going to blame Russia. They are blaming Russia for everything, right? So this time, it's not going to be any different. In any case, either way, scum of humanity was minuster, which is a good thing, right? Let me continue with some more news, dear friends. And TASS news agency is reporting that Russian air defense systems shut down 4 Neptune missiles and 233 drones that was launched by Kiev regime with assistance of NATO in previous 24 hours. And lately, probably you noticed that Kiev regime intensified launches of these Neptune missiles. Although Russian armed forces were quite successful in eliminating those launchers, right? And videos already are circulating on internet with their successful Iskander M strikes. But nevertheless, they still have some capabilities to orchestrate such strikes. Relatively large-scale attack on Russian Federations conducted by Kiev regime with assistance of NATO, but Russian air defense systems, as always, were locked and ready to eliminate aerial targets, and vast majority was eliminated. The TASS news agency is also reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Kamyshevacha settlement in a DPR right next to a border with Dnipropetrovsk region. So on the southern western flank of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration, Russian troops basically reached almost everywhere all along their border to the Dnipropetrovsk region. And I remind you, dear friends, that at least 6 or 7 settlements already been liberated inside the Dnipropetrovsk region too. So important sectoral scale success of the Russian militaries. Also, dear friends, TASS news agency, based on Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation, is reporting that during the previous 24 hours, Kiev regime lost more than 1,300, almost 1,400 military personnel all along the front line. Tremendous numbers, tremendous casualties on side of Kiev regime, and this is literally daily developments. That's the level of casualties that Kiev regime is suffering literally every day. 1,300 to 1,500 military personnel, quite often even higher than that. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Defense Minister of Russian Federation, Belousov, spoke about the pace of advancement of the Russian armed forces during the special military operation. Let me give you some details from the statements of the minister. So the pace of advancement of the Russian troops is increasing during the special military operation in Ukraine. Defense Minister Andriy Belousov said at their expanded meeting of the department board And there are key points from statements of Belarus, according to RIA Novosti, are that in 2025, the armed forces carried out 35 massive and group strikes on 146 critically important facilities of the Ukrainian armed forces. 62% of key enterprises of the Ukrainian military-industrial complex were damaged. The combat potential of the Ukrainian armed forces has been significantly reduced. In 2025, Ukrainian armed forces lost more than 340,000 military personnel and over 65,000 units of weapons. And dear friends, if you notice, a report of Russian Defense Ministry about casualties of Kiev regime in 2025 is almost twice low than information that was provided to public by hacker group Killnet that hacked general servers of the general staff of the Kiev regime. According to information that hackers took from those servers, since the beginning of special military operation, Kiev regime lost or killed and missing 1.7 million military personnel, and in 2025 alone, casualty number of on side of Kiev regime was over 500,000. Right, and as you can see, dear friends, Russian Defense Ministry, being extremely conservative institution, even in this case, is sharing much more conservative numbers, but nevertheless, it's a still tremendous number, isn't it? 340,000 military personnel to be casualty just since the January. Belarus also state that every month the army liberates about 600 to 700 square kilometers of the territory in the zone of special military operation. So much so for a stalemate, isn't it? If you listen to Western propaganda, it's a stalemate, and Russian armed forces are unable to liberate territories or at once. But in reality, we all know, dear friends, that almost on daily basis, Russian Defense Ministry and a number of other sources are reporting about more and more settlements being liberated, and their defense minister. Yet again, let's keep in mind that this is conservative estimates. Defense Minister is saying that every month Russian armed forces liberating about 600 to 700 square kilometers in zone of special military operation. On the equipment and development of the army, below stated that this year 22,725 units of motorcycles, ATVs and buggies were delivered to the troops, and another 12,186 units will be delivered by the end of this year. I mean, quite impressive numbers there. Russian economy, Russian military industrial complex, and some private companies, by the way, adapted quite well to begin producing inventory that is useful for Russian armed forces, and there we have results of that. Also, Belarus said that volume of deliveries of tactical drones to troops has increased significantly, which has undoubtedly had a positive impact on the course of the military operation. The main priorities of the state program are strategic nuclear forces, space assets, air defense, electronic warfare assets, communications and control, unmanned systems and robotics complexes, as well as artificial intelligence technologies below pointed out. Also, he went to say that the updated list of military registration specialists is being formed, taking into account predicted military conflicts. By the end of 2025, we need to move to a new model of a military construction complex. For September, 3 academies will begin training military personnel in 11 new specialties related to drones and robots. So Russian army is adapting, by the way, to new ways of warfare that until current conflict, no army actually had much experience in, and currently, definitely, I think Russian ground forces are most capable ground forces that ever existed, I guess, on this planet. The plan for recruitment for military service under the contract in 2025 has been increased, and the targets are being met. I remind you, dear friends, that on monthly basis, about 20, 30, time to time 40,000 people are joining Russian armed forces while sign up voluntarily. By the way, they are signing up for a contractor, and more people would be able to actually enjoying, but not everyone is fit basically for this, and there is a reason why many people are joining. First of all, there is a high level of patriotism in society, of course, and people want to help motherland to defeat their enemies, of course. And on addition to that, militaries are being paid quite well. Probably Russian soldier has either same level or probably even higher salary than US military, for example, or militaries in Europe. And Russian officers definitely have, I think, much higher salaries than their NATO counterparts. So this is also a stimulus, obviously, because quite significant funds have been invested in armed forces, right? Also, Bell also went to say that experimental combat testing of their awareness systems at their tactical level, SWOD, will take place in September and November. I don't even know what this system is. The Ministry of Defense optimized financial expenses without reducing weapons purchases, which is important, obviously. The ministry has completed the creation of a state system of unified military registration, and he made quite more, number of quite other statements, but this is key statements from him. And while taking into account these statements, you will have a little better understanding on the state of Russian armed forces right now, and about progress of the special military operation. And dear friends, before I continue, let me once again emphasize that this media project is completely subscriber funded. That is only exist as long as I have your support, community support. So therefore, if you like my work, if you want to see this project surviving and maybe even further developing, please consider to support her. As I said in the beginning, you can support my work and this project through several means: through PayPal platform. You can donate also. You can donate through Boosty platform. You can subscribe, and please do to my Patreon page, by the way, where I have extra content on a regular basis. Yesterday I published second news update in the walk and talk style. For example, day before yesterday I published a little concert, by the way, that I filmed there last Sunday on one of the squares here in Moscow. And every day, every work day, I had some update there. So there is always some extra content there, exclusive content. This is my thank to everybody who is subscribing on my Patreon and helping me to maintain this project. So yes, please consider to do it. Also, you can use crypto to support if you are good with that. And during the live streams, you can use super chat or round feature on Rumble, and you can become a premium subscriber on the Rumble. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. That's been said, dear friends. Of course, many thanks to everybody who supported, continues to support, and keeps me in this extremely difficult and competitive field of news and political commentary. Thank you all, dear friends. That's been said. Lot of news, by the way, lot of news to unpack still. And yesterday, in my second update on Patreon, I reported, and I will repeat today some of the news from that yesterday's Patreon update. I reported that, according to several sources, General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that their missile forces and their other units carried out strikes, yet another strikes, on elements of a Druzhba oil pipeline in the Bryansk region of the Russian Federation. I was looking for a follow-up news on this development. Unfortunately, I did not find any, so I am not quite sure that this report is correct, or it could be, of course, it could be. Anyways, if oil supplies, if pipeline was damaged again significantly, and their oil supplies are not resumed through Hungary and Slovakia, then I guess Budapest will make additional statements on that. Although I said earlier, isn't it, when this pipeline was targeted by Kyiv regime and Budapest was reacting, that only statements probably will have no influence, neither on London, by the way, main force among the globalists, right, and neither on Brussels. Nothing to be said about Kyiv regime that acts under the orders of, first of all, London and then some other European capitals. So therefore, well, as I said, only statements will not help. Some action to be taken or should be taken by Hungary if they actually want to deter Kyiv regime and Kyiv regime's Western backers from these attacks on strategical energy infrastructure, strategical for Hungary, by the way. It's more important for Hungary than for Russia because, well, if a pipeline is damaged beyond repair, which is hardly possible, but let's say if that is the case, then Hungary will suffer. Other European countries that are receiving oil from there will suffer because they will have to look for other ways, right, to receive energy source, probably in much more higher price than Russian energy. While Moscow, Russian energy companies, I don't think will have much difficulty to sell this oil to someone else, right? So therefore, Hungary should be a little more proactive, I think. And by the way, on the topic of Hungary, we also have this report from TASS News Agency that this Eastern or Central European country, which way you prefer, lost about 22.5 billion euros, by the way, due to the conflict in Ukraine and the EU policies. Let me give you some details. The Hungarian government estimates the country's financial losses as a result of the conflict in Ukraine and their Europe's or Brussels policies to be more than 22.5 billion euros. This was stated by the head of the Hungarian Prime Minister's office, Antal Rogan, speaking at the annual political festival Transit in Tihany on the shores of Lake Balaton. And by the way, I mean, numbers are quite telling, isn't it? So when Budapest is angry due to policies, crazy policies of the Brussels or terrorist activity of the Kyiv regime, they have a reason, by the way. Hungary is suffering as a result of this, right? Hungary's economy and subsequently people of Hungary are suffering. Also, their friend Zelensky went to make some statements about security guarantees. Still, Western, or let's say globalists and globalist-controlled regimes in Europe are pushing all sorts of ideas, by the way, in regards to security guarantees, in regards to their vision of how things should be. In regards to this crisis, they are completely ignoring Moscow's stance on that. And well, Zelensky, being talking head of or the puppet of these globalist controlled regimes in Europe, basically repeats whatever he's being told. And therefore, let's go through these points that he made in regards to ending the conflict. Barely any of it will work, by the way. So the head of the Western-backed terrorist regime in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, has laid out 3 sets of guarantees he's demanding from his Western backers. Basically, he's demanding nothing. He is not in a position to demand. This is ideas, yet again, this is ideas of globalists and globalist-controlled regimes. And first point is that they want continued funding of the Ukrainian army at the current manpower levels, along with uninterrupted weapons supplies. This is no-go straight away, isn't it? Because one of the key demands of the Russian Federation is to minimize Kyiv regime's military capabilities. Ukraine should be neutral, and its military should not be in a position to threaten anybody in the region, right? So this first point is definitely a red line for Moscow. Second demand of globalists is that agreement should be made with NATO's European members to join action in the event of renewed escalation. And this is, of course, trap, by the way. This is a trap for European NATO member states because, well, globalists, if we conduct some thought experiment and if we imagine that, well, sometime in the future, peace was agreed. But if European NATO member states obligated themselves to get involved in a confrontation directly, openly, if conflict is renewed, then, well, what will stop globalists to restart the conflict, right? And bring European NATO member states, and that is a NATO in its entirety, basically, if US will not leave the organization, in a war with Russia directly and openly, which will be, I guess, end of everything, right? So this is a clearly provocation intended to basically keep European countries, keep NATO countries in this war as long as possible, and also a threat to world security. Literally, this is a threat to world security, and of course, Moscow will never agree on that term. Third point is preservation of sanctions against Russia and transfer of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. And well, on this third point, by the way, well, one might argue that this is already being done because barely anybody believes that collective West will ever return to Russia those frozen assets, whatever is left of it, right? Because there are rumors that European bureaucracy already began to stealing those, not just profits from the frozen assets, but frozen assets themselves, right? And when it comes to sanctions, by the way, you have seen statements from European so-called leadership, they are about more sanctions, not less, right? So they're not going to lift sanctions on Russia, even if peace is agreed like today or tomorrow. And a number of high-ranking officials in Europe already made such statements that even if peace being achieved, right, and there is no more military hostilities, they will not lift sanctions on Russia. So therefore, this third point is actually already being kind of implemented, right? So therefore, yes, that's third one is, but first 2 points, definitely a red line for Russian Federation. Moscow will never agree, of course, Russian frozen assets to be stolen, but yet again, what can Moscow do about it? Only retaliate, right? And I remind you, dear friends, that as a retaliatory measure, Russia froze about similar volume of Western investments in Russia. So once they will begin openly stealing Russian assets, then, well, Russian state will have every reason, every legal means, basically, to do the same and confiscate Western assets as a retaliation, by the way. Moscow did not started this, but, well, Moscow always has a right to retaliate, right? Also, dear friends, Zelensky, and by saying Zelensky, I mean globalists, they have another demand, which is that European states that will participate in these so-called security guarantees to Ukraine should made it mandatory on legislative level in those European countries, right? Which is crazy stuff to demand, but that's what they do. So the former leader of the Western-backed terrorist regime in Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, has declared in yet another hysteria that security guarantees for Ukraine must be ratified by the parliaments of those allied countries that provide these guarantees. Yet again, globalists clearly want to create more and more obstacles for NATO member states to get out of this war. That's what they do, by the way. That's what demands are all about, right? And I guess based on my understanding of a level of influence that globalists have over the European countries, some of them probably will actually go ahead and ratify these guarantees on the parliament level. So they will obligate themselves, their countries actually, to be part of this war, I guess forever. To continue, dear friends, RT is also reporting that Zelensky claims that Ukraine's security guarantees will be ready next week. Okay, we will see. And yet again, dear friends, no one is asking Moscow. No one is asking what Moscow's position is, although it is known perfectly well. But nevertheless, these European countries, by the way, these globalist controlled European states, their leadership is not communicating with Moscow, right? So what the hell is going on? Are they serious about the escalation if you are not talking to Russian side? Of course they are not, right? This is all just big deception operation, and that's it really, right? So Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky has claimed that a complete framework of security guarantees for Kiev in a case of a ceasefire or peace deal Russia will be ready as early as the next week. In a Telegram post on Thursday, Zelensky said he had spoken with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, adding that they had discussed their next diplomatic steps to settle the conflict. There has been a lot of talks about security guarantees. National security advisors are currently working on the development of each specific component, and next week the entire configuration will be on paper, Zelensky said. According to Ukrainian so-called leader, Erdogan involved his defense minister in the process to examine how Turkey can help guarantee security, including in the Black Sea. Well, Turkey better stay out of this war, as otherwise they're gonna get smashed, by the way. And every other country should do the same. Should do the same, by the way, because it's in reality. Let's be real here. In reality, Moscow not gonna be engaged in no useless negotiations. By the way, in reality, Moscow already made it clear to collective West, political elites of the West, what Moscow's demands is, on what conditions West gonna capitulate. That's it. It's a capitulation that West will sign up for, right? And we should all understand this. For public, for domestic purposes, for public use, Western so-called elites can act tough, jump out of socks and do whatever crazy things they want to do, you know, like. But in reality, they will sign up for capitulation. It might not happen today, tomorrow, in a month or 3 or 5 months time, maybe not even a year, but eventually they will come to the terms and they will capitulate. That's what this is about, by the way. Collective West started this war in 2000, and not even in 2014, by the way, in 2008. This proxy war against Russia started in 2008, by the way. Some might argue even earlier than that, right? And that's why in 2007, Russian President Vladimir Putin made that historical speech in the Munich Security Conference, right? He knew that West basically was engaged, acting hostile towards Russia, and West was already engaged in a proxy war against Russia at that time, right? And that's why Russian president was issuing warnings in 2007 that this would not end well. And what West did after these warnings, well, they used their puppet regime in Georgia under the leadership of Saakashvili to reignite a civil war there in South Ossetia, and then to attack Russian peacekeepers and basically leave Moscow no option but to react on this act of war and get engaged militarily, right? And you all remember tremendous level of demonization of Russia that began after 2008, after that August war. And until now, by the way, Western public has no freaking idea, majority of it, has no freaking idea what actually went down there, right? So this proxy war was started long before even 2014. I will counter beginning from 2007, although some might even argue that no, even earlier than that, right? But anyways, collective West, Western ruling elites, they started this war, and Russia will finish it on Russian terms, right? And collective West, leadership of collective West will capitulate. It's absolutely inevitable. RT is also reporting that, well, even though Russian position is very clear, obviously time to time Russian officials are being asked what they think about these proposals from the West, that proposals, and Russian officials are basically forced to reiterate what they already said, right? And for example, Maria Zakharova, official spokeswoman of Russian Foreign Ministry, stated that Ukraine's security guarantees only should come after a peace deal. So security guarantees for Ukraine must be the result of a settlement of the conflict with Russia, not a precondition for negotiations. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said Kiev has demanded security guarantees from its Western backers as a prerequisite to a peace deal. Moscow has not ruled out guarantees in principle, but opposes efforts to design them without Russia's participation. And as I said, dear friends, Moscow is completely ignored. No one is asking Moscow what we think about this or that idea that globalists and their puppets are generating in Europe, right, or in collective West. And well, position is quite clear, isn't it? Security guarantees should be the result of the settlement, right? Not a precondition. That's it. Very clear statement from Moscow. And also, by the way, Maria Zakharova went to say that guarantees, those so-called security guarantees, must include demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine, this Western-backed terrorist regime, also Ukraine's neutral status, recognition of territorial realities on the ground, ensuring rights of the Russian speakers, ending prosecution of the Orthodox Church. So basically, Russian terms that we know since the beginning of special military operation, right? A Russian position has not changed even slightest. And you know why? Because we are winning. Russia is winning, by the way. And as I said, there are going to be no negotiations. It's going to be Western capitulation. That's it. That's it. We can call it negotiation, we can call it whatever we want, but in reality, what it's going to be factually is a capitulation of their collective West, Western ruling class, globalists, neocons, all they are the garbage that is in charge in the West, right? And ruins lives of everybody in this world, tries at least, right? Including citizens of Western countries that are experiencing already tremendous hardships, by the way, due to crazy policies of these so-called elites in the West, right? Also, dear friends, I think this is important news that US PMCs may be sent to Ukraine as a part of so-called security guarantees, according to media reports. Yet again, I mean, they are not asking Moscow what Russia thinks about these developments, what Russian leadership thinks about all this stuff. And this is either, I mean, due to tremendous stupidity of the Western so-called elites, or just another indicator that they are not serious about actual de-escalation. That's what I think, by the way. That's what I think. Right? And so, dear friends, let me read a little bit of this report for you now. So, US President Donald Trump allegedly is in talks with the European countries about the potential deployment of US private military companies, or PMCs, personnel to Ukraine to provide security guarantees. The Daily Telegraph reported, citing sources. And well, by the way, I don't know why US even getting engaged with the globalists and globalist controlled European regimes on this matter of security guarantees, man. Trump started so freaking well after Anchorage summit with Putin, right? Trump made it clear that Washington no longer demands this nonsensical 30-day ceasefire that was in agenda of the globalists, because they wanted their break, by the way, desperately wanted the break for their proxy Zelensky regime and its forces. And Trump also went to say that, well, peace deal should be preferable, right? Actual peace deal should be preferable, not some temporary measures. And that was a good position to start negotiations with these representatives of the number of European countries, or the globalists, by the way, that took place in Washington. You remember, isn't it, that meeting when there was a Trump, Macron, Stammer, Merz, Finnish President Stober, Ursula von der Leyen, and who else? I guess that's it, right? Zelensky also. And Trump started well, but then somehow, I mean, he allowed these globalist puppets from Europe to lure him in this discussion of the security guarantees. Initially, Trump was saying, you know what, that topic should be on Europe, leave us alone. That was our initial approach, as far as I can tell, right? But unfortunately, Trump, flip-flop on the topic again, which is not good, by the way. And now, look, pressure, I guess, on the White House is increasing. And even though Washington did not yet come up with a statement that they also going to send the troops or something, but, well, sending PMCs is also a red line for Russia, isn't it? So this will not fly through. And this is unfortunate, by the way, because I believe, and I said it many times before, that Anchorage summit was actually a success story. And I believe Russian and US delegations talk more about ways that two countries can cooperate, improve relationships, and cooperate that will benefit both and also the rest of the world than about Ukraine. Ukraine was not the main topic of discussions in Anchorage, I believe, right? Other stuff was. And so there was good reasons to be partially optimistic or cautiously optimistic that maybe America First Forces finally regain initiative in the White House, right? And there will begin pulling out US from this proxy war. But unfortunately, seems like this is not necessarily the case. And this information is also confirms that, isn't it? Why Trump is saying that, well, US PMC should be deployed, man? Why? That's a question I have. Although, by the way, it is also a possibility that Telegraph is just this Daily Telegraph, British media outlet, is just lying. That could be the case too. You just never know with Western media, isn't it? And allegedly, according to Financial Times, Trump is backing also idea of Chinese peacekeepers in Ukraine, which is just crazy stuff to think about, even, right? China never said they will send the peacekeepers. Russia never spoke about Chinese peacekeepers. It was a narrative, false narrative that was created by Western propaganda outlets, by Western public figures, and they push this narrative so much so that now they are forcing Trump to make comments on these false narratives. I mean, what the hell, man? Trump definitely needs some better people around him, people that are actually informed well, right, about stuff, so that he will be briefed in a better way. This is not good. This is just not good, man. This is not the level that US president or any president should operate. Anyways, that's what report is, that US President Donald Trump has proposed deploying Chinese peacekeepers to Ukraine to monitor potential ceasefire between Russian and Ukrainian forces. The Financial Times reported on Friday, citing people briefed on the discussion. According to 4 Financial Times sources, Trump suggested that China station troops in the prospective neutral zone along a 1,300-kilometer front line as a part of a peace settlement with Russia. The proposal was reportedly made during a meeting at the White House last week involving European leaders and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky. I don't know, by the way. I don't know. Western propaganda, Western public figures use their to promote this false narrative about Chinese peacekeepers, used information or statements of Russian high-ranking official, that was Lavrov, I believe, foreign minister, or maybe someone else. But statement itself was that, when it comes to security guarantees that is discussed this widely, then of course China, US, France, UK, and Russia should be engaged in this process, right? But this statement was not about deployment of troops of these countries. These countries were mentioned only because they are permanent members of the Security Council of the UN. And what Russian side was pointing out there is that whatever agreement will be reached, that agreement should be sealed, sort of, or agreed by UN Security Council, right? So that this agreement will have a more weight in terms of on international level. That's what this statement was about, that permanent members of the Security Council, that is Russia itself, China, US, UK, and France, should be engaged in this process. And of course they should, right? But yet again, all we see right now is some so-called elites in Europe are coming up with this idea and that idea that they know a priori that would not work, right? Because they have to know, they cannot be that stupid not to know what Russian positions are, right? So therefore, they are intentionally coming up with their proposals that they know would not be implemented, and that means they are not about peace, right? And also US, unfortunately, is still engaged in these nonsensical talks with their globalist controlled European regimes on the topic of security guarantees. If they were serious, by the way, then well, let's do it in a serious manner. Let's let experts from Moscow, Beijing, Washington, London, and Paris get together, work on the matter, right, and discuss the issue. But no, Moscow and Beijing was ignored, by the way, and US president now is talking on behalf of China on deployment of Chinese peacekeepers, which is crazy, by the way. Just a few days ago, I reported, isn't it, that Chinese Foreign Ministry's official spokesman said that this is not a topic. This topic is not in the conversation of deployment of Chinese peacekeepers. Some nonsensical stuff there, by the way. Moscow would not. I don't think Moscow will have much issue with Chinese troops being on Russian territory as peace, not on Russian territory, on Kiev-controlled territory as a peacekeepers if peace deal is actually reached, right? Because Russian and Chinese militaries are cooperating quite well. Two countries are cooperating quite well, so therefore, almost on a regular basis, by the way, there are Russian troops in China, Chinese troops in Russia that are taking part in all sorts of exercises, right? Russian navies are training constantly, Russian Air Force and Chinese Air Force, they are training constantly. So it's not going to be a big deal. But yet again, no one is asking China, no one is asking Moscow, which is crazy, isn't it? It's not up to Trump to say what China will do, right? Anyways, let's continue, dear friends. Vzgliad is also reporting that US announced their transfer of weapons to Ukrainian armed forces that can strike deeper into Russian territory. And unfortunately, US ambassador to NATO basically acknowledged that US is directly engaged in strikes on Russia. And he acknowledged this on TV, by the way, and I can give you a short video in a second. Before, let's go through this news in a little detail. So United States is providing Ukraine with weapons that allow it to strike deeper into Russian territory. US Permanent Representative to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, stated, we have quote here, "We are providing some means to strike deeper, and most likely the Ukrainians will use them." However, he did not specify what types of weapons he was talking about. Whitaker mentioned Washington's plans to sell Kiev more than 3,000 ERAM air-launched long-range missiles, cruise missiles, as well as NATO allies purchasing weapons from the US for Ukrainian, dear friends. These long-range weapons, cruise missiles or tactical missiles like ATACMS, they cannot be launched by Kiev regime. That's their point there, right? These missiles need flight path targeting data for these missiles have to be provided by US intelligence, US militaries. And while saying that US is providing these long-range capabilities to Kiev regime, Whitaker unwillingly is admitting that US is directly engaged in deep strikes on Russian territory. Yet again, this does not look like Washington wants the escalation with Moscow. This is very unfortunate, and I guess maybe my cautious optimism after Anchorage summit was it was a mistake. I should not be that cautiously optimistic. Too bad. But yet again, as more and more time passes by from Anchorage summit, by the way. Seems like more and more assets of the globalists, either from Europe or globalist assets inside the US, are trying to manipulate with the Trump, trying to manipulate with the Trump's administration, and they are succeeding, man. They are succeeding. Seems like, which is unfortunate, but that's what it is, right? And let me give you this short video, dear friends, that I mentioned a second ago. This is the video.
It's all different. First of all, those weapons, the U.S. weapons that are now being used on the front lines of the war in Ukraine are not being paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we are talking with the Russians. That was not happening during the Biden administration. And finally, we're giving some deeper strike capabilities, and most likely the Ukrainians are going to use them. And that obviously is much different than what Joe Biden did. So
you see, he's saying it publicly, openly, by the way. And well, what can I say? Too bad. Too bad. Those weapons already were used, by the way. These long-range weapons already was used there for strikes deep into Russian territory, and I'm afraid hundreds of those long-range cruise missiles, ARAM, probably already has been deployed, and soon we're gonna see Russian air defense dealing with those weapon systems. This is too bad. This is too bad, man. This is not the topics that U.S. officials should brag about, but that's what they do, man. You tell me what you think about it, but this is not good, man. This is just not right. And dear friends, I hope sound is good. I will delete now some of the news that I have bookmarked, and I went through already, to make sure that operational memory of the notebook will not become overwhelmed. So it takes just a minute, dear friends. Just a second. And the next news that I want to share is this report from RIA Novosti that German Chancellor Friedrich Merz stated actually that Germany is in a conflict with Russia. Last time I checked, there was no war declared between Germany and Russia, and we should not be in a conflict. But in reality, of course, we are. Unfortunately, German intelligence, German military assets, German weapon systems are used against Russia on literally on daily basis. So German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, against the backdrop of the European Commission's desire to multiply military spending, said that his country is already in a conflict with Russia. We are already in a conflict with Russia, he said in an interview with the French TV channel LCI. Merz blamed Moscow for the current situation, which allegedly destabilizes the significant part of Germany and interferes in the country's affairs through social network. Russia had previously categorically rejected such baseless accusations. And by the way, I mean, you tell me what you make of it. This topic of Russian intervention on some domestic issues of these Western countries is just I don't think anybody really cared no more about it. We all remember Russiagate stuff in US, right? When intelligence services, by the way, state institutions of US were engaged in this deception operation, right? And they lied to America, whole of America, right? And whole of world about this. And now we know. I was skeptical from the beginning, by the way, right? Of that Russiagate and many others, right? But unfortunately, majority, especially in the collective West countries, actually believe that Trump was a Russian asset and a Russian specialist influenced their elections in US and basically make Trump to win elections. I mean, total nonsense, by the way, total garbage, right? And it's proven now. It's official now. Just recently, Tulsi Gabbard made statements about it, also published unclassified documents. And we know for sure that state institutions, by the way, intelligence community, are engaged directly, and also, of course, establishment of Democratic Party there and deep state in this deception operation. And why should we think that there is any different situation in Germany, by the way? They are blaming Russia for literally everything. They're gonna say soon, maybe they already did, by the way. I don't monitor German media that much. Maybe they already are blaming AfD, by the way, Alternative for Germany Party, to be Russian asset also. Friends from Germany, please share information. Did such a claims already been made there in regards to AfD? I would not be surprised if they've been blamed to be Russian assets, man, because these globalists and globalist puppet regimes all over the Europe, including in Germany, by the way, are truly psychopaths, man. That they are intellectually bankrupt elements. That is a stupid, by the way. They really are stupid people, right? That are in charge there, formally at least, and they are psychos. They are psychos, by the way. They are capable of saying and doing anything, really. Right. So yes, according to Merzer, Germany is in a conflict with Russia. Very dangerous statement, by the way. Very dangerous statement. He is inviting trouble on Germany, and they might find out. They might find out hard way that was and that is a mistake. I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, there is a process of awakening in Germany, by the way, a number of other European countries. AfD, for a reason, is the most popular party, believe it or not, in Germany right now. And so, people are waking up. People are waking up, and hopefully they will be able to reclaim their own country and their own destiny. And in that case, I'm quite sure, by the way, Russia will manage to normalize the relationships. We will have good relationships with any country that is run by patriots there, that are run by people that base their policies on the best interests of their fellow citizens. With such a people, we will find their common ground for sure, but not with their globalists or neocons or that kind of stuff that have no care about anybody in this world, right? In the West, in the East, North or South. All they care is their own mercantile interests, their own dominance, and that's it, right? Their own power and enrichment. That's all. Information, dear friends, are also, I think this is important, that Denmark is purchasing Patriot air defense systems from the US for Ukraine. State Department approved the sale of 6 Patriot systems to Denmark for the need of the armed forces of Ukraine, worth $8.5 billion, by the way. And I'm quite sure in our community, there are people from Denmark, by the way. Please tell me, are you happy with this information? That 8.5 billion of your money, your hard-earned money, by the way, that you pay as a taxes, is being wasted this way. It's insane, isn't it? It's insane, but that's what they do. Another 8.5 billion is going to military-industrial complex in US from Danish taxpayers. Unbelievable. And of course, Russian troops, by the way, will eliminate those Patriot missiles shortly after they will arrive in Ukraine. Although, if my understanding is correct, Raytheon, it is Raytheon, isn't it, that builds Patriots, or some other company, whichever is, by the way, they're gonna build it from scratch, right? They're gonna build new ones. So therefore, it will take probably years before these 6 Patriot batteries will be actually transferred to Denmark. By then, most likely Russia will force globalists and globalist control regimes to capitulation. So those Patriots would not be delivered to Western-backed terrorist regime in Kiev, because there will be no more terrorist regime there. It will be gone. Also, dear friends, DD Geopolitics reported, and many other channels, by the way, about Russian night strikes. Let me give you some details on that. Long-range precision strikes that Russian militaries conducted. So explosions occurred in Kiev, Volhynia, Ivano-Frankivsk. Volhynia and Ivano-Frankivsk are Western Ukraine, by the way. Also Khmelnytsky, and the Cherkasy region's infrastructure facilities, or military-industrial complex, basically, were damaged in Dnipropetrovsk also, and Pavlograd fire started there, local media reports, and in Pavlograd, I believe a chemical plant was struck that is engaged in the production of fuel for missiles. It was part of a military-industrial complex, and there was a massive strike. I saw some videos on the internet, by the way. If that report was correct, then that facility experienced some tremendous damage. For sure, some residents of Zaporozhye were left without electricity and the gas in the city after the strikes. Fire broke out at the industrial enterprise there. Railway infrastructure was also damaged in the Kyiv region. Several trains are delayed. So relatively large-scale Russian long-range drone, mainly drone strike, by the way, on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, military-industrial complex. Also, dear friends, I think this information worth to be noticed that USAID is basically officially finished now. USAID has begun formally closing its doors, and its key programs have been transferred to their State Department. Secretary of the State, Marco Rubio, said the official closure of the USAID agency was announced by the US Secretary of the State, Marco Rubio, on his page on the social network X. So he also noted there that taxpayers have saved tens of billions of dollars since January. Rubio explained that key programs have been transferred to the US State Department. And dear friends, this is an important part there, isn't it? That key programs have been transferred to US State Department. If you think that Washington will stop financing or wasting tens of billions of US taxpayers' money on all sorts of programs to gain some influence in other countries, no, it's not gonna happen, by the way. They will continue to spend and waste tens of billions of US taxpayers' money on all sorts of programs to have a footprint in every country they potentially can. It would not be USAID, but they will come up with some other name, some other department inside their State Department, and it will continue this work for basically not for to benefit US citizens, by the way, but to benefit a ruling class in the West, right? It's all about domination, by the way. That's all they care. And whenever they are not happy with this or that country, by the way, well, they will always have opportunity to use their assets that they are creating, right, through these programs to destabilize that country, conduct regime change, and so on. In how many so-called color revolutions USAID was involved, alongside Soros's Open Society Foundation, dozens, right? So unfortunately, this process will continue under different names, but they will continue to do it. And dear friends, I don't think you're going to be surprised to hear this report that U.S. investigative journalist Seymour Hersh has been added to a key list mirotvorets by the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. So yes, now Seymour Hersh, award-winning journalist, is also in that kill list. I don't know if he will react on it in any way, shape, or form, but I will just remind you, dear friends, that reports are that this Mirotvorets kill list is basically this whole operation is done under umbrella of Kyiv regime secret services, SBU, basically, and also CIA. That's what rumors are, right, on the internet, and therefore, well, U.S. intelligence services are putting U.S. citizen on a kill list, one might say, right? And he is not the first one from U.S., by the way. There's quite a number of U.S. citizens, outspoken critics of Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists and their Western backers, already being added to this kill list, and many more people, by the way, from all over the world. Also, dear friends, a couple of more news. Vladimir Putin's working program in China will begin on August 31st. Presidential press secretary Dmitry Peskov reported there are leaders from all over the world, by the way, are already arriving in China to participate in biggest ever summit of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And of course, Russian president will be there. His visit will start tomorrow and will last for 4 days. Quite a long visit, by the way. It's a very rare occasion when Russian president stays in other country this longer. I don't even remember if there was any such case ever before, right? So probably this is going to be some unprecedented level of visit, and we should expect some very serious agreements to be reached and formalized during this visit of the Russian president into China. He will also, of course, participate in the work of Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. He will also have meetings with numerous world leaders, including Chinese leader. And these days, in upcoming days, we're going to have some interesting news, by the way, from China on all sorts of agreements that will be reached. Also, interesting news that, well, Trump will cut foreign aid by another 5 billion, including support for Kiev. This was reported by New York Times. According to publication, 3.2 billion from these 5 was intended for a USAID that are no longer going to function. But yet again, Rubio says, isn't it, that key programs from USAID will be transferred to some other department in State Dep, and so therefore money still will still flow, by the way, right? And then there are tens of billions of US taxpayers' dollars gonna go on all sorts of crazy programs that US State Department will be engaged worldwide. RT is also reporting that J.D. Vance, by the way, is said that he's ready to let the U.S. in case of tragedy if something happened to Trump. So U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has said he is ready to assume the presidency should a terrible tragedy befall Donald Trump, citing the 7 months of on-the-job training he has received in a current post. And Trump is, by the way, is 79, right? He's 79, one of the oldest presidents that U.S. ever had there. And, well, age is serious, obviously, but I don't think if Trump will leave office earlier, that would be due to his health. He looks quite okay. I mean, let's be real, isn't it? He looks quite energetic, by the way. You cannot compare him to Biden, for example, right? Biden was like a walking zombie, mummy sort of, sometimes scary to look. He barely was understanding where he was or with whom he was talking. Probably he was struggling to recognize himself in the mirror. Trump is different. He's, he's energetic. He might say some crazy stuff time to time, but nevertheless, we cannot say that he's not there, right? So therefore, if Trump will move out of White House earlier than his term, then I don't think that will be because of his health. But I think that will be because of the certain, maybe because of the revolt inside the Republicans. Because yet again, as far as I can tell, by the way, America First forces want nothing to do with these forever wars. As far as I can tell, America First forces don't want the U.S. to be engaged in a war with Russia, proxy war, or, of course, in open war. They don't want this to be the case. They don't want this to happen, right? They want U.S. leadership to be more focused on U.S. domestic issues, and there is many, right, that needs attention. And I would not be surprised at all if these America First forces will rebel inside the Republican Party and will remove Trump with the legal means, by the way, but will remove him. And there is already at least few points that might be very upsetting for America. First, people, firstly, it's a cover up for Epstein files. People are not happy about it, right? In US. And secondly, Trump loves to say this is not his war, but US is still engaged in this proxy war against Russia. And many people are not happy about it, including people, by the way, that are leading voices, I will say, in America First Movement, right? And I can continue. There are some other topics too that irritates America First, and only so much they will tolerate. By the way, at one point they might say, "You know what, J.D. Vance, just take over, man. This guy is promised us that he will do this, and that, and he's not delivering. So maybe he's compromised or something." America First people were not happy that U.S. began attacking Iran on behalf of Israel, right? And questions are arising: is Trump really compromised by Israeli secret services or by any other force? I don't know. So if J.D. Vance will overtake White House because of the rebellion inside the Republican Party, I think, because of the rebellion of America First forces, not because Trump will not be in a physical shape to do his job. I mean, he looks quite okay, by the way. He's 79, he's energetic, he plays golf, and he can outrun in speeches probably all the journalists that are usually presented in the Oval Office. He can talk a lot, and sometimes his talks may not make much sense, but nevertheless, he is full of energy. So yes, Vance should get ready anyways, right? Because things might happen. RT is reporting also, dear friends, and well, this news not going to go down well with the White House for sure, and neither with the Trump if he will learn about this development. So NATO states president claims Trump is a Russian asset. So Russiagate stuff, by the way, again. So Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa has accused US President Donald Trump of only pretending to act as an impartial mediator in the Ukraine conflict while serving Moscow's interests and functioning as a Russian asset. He said, I mean, who is this idiot, man? This president of Portugal. What he's talking about? Donald Trump is not impartial mediator. He is a leader, president of the country that is directly engaged in this proxy war against Russia. He is not a freaking mediator. He is a leader of the country that is still engaged in this proxy war against Russia. And U.S. Permanent representative to NATO, and I show you a couple of minutes ago a video, by the way, openly says that under the Trump's administration, U.S. is delivering to Kyiv regime long-range weapon systems that Biden was refusing to do. Although Biden did transfer ATACMS, by the way, tactical long-range missiles, and hundreds of those missiles were launched to strike deep into Russia. Vast majority was intercepted, but nevertheless, we all remember, dear friends, tragedy that happened in Crimea, isn't it? When ATACMS missile with struck a beach side, basically, and dozens and dozens and dozens of civilians were casualties of that strike. I think many members of our community still remember that instance, isn't it? That was ATACMS missile, by the way, with this warhead, that cluster warhead that deploys hundreds of small explosives, right? And there was tremendous casualties, by the way, as a result of that strike. So unfortunately, some missiles did harm Russian citizens, but vast majority was intercepted. And now, representative of U.S. in NATO is bragging about giving Russian enemies weapon systems that have to be launched with direct assistance of U.S. militaries and intelligence, by the way. But nevertheless, they are openly saying that they are transferring these long-range capabilities that Biden even refused to do. And this idiot, that is the president of Portugal, claims that Trump is on the Russian side. What the hell, man? From where these psychopaths are coming, man? From where these psychopaths are coming? It's insane, isn't it? It's truly insane. I would like Trump to be a Russian asset, by the way. I would have no issue with that. But unfortunately, his president, his first term was very harmful and hostile to Russia. And his second term, by the way, even though I want to be at least, partially optimistic that America First forces will manage to, keep control over the White House. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. His second term might be also devastating for Russia-U.S. relationships. And how anyone can call him a Russian asset, by the way. I mean, what the hell, man? Anyways, dear friends, there is another region, of course, in this world that might become our next hotspot on a global map. That is Venezuela, of course. Trump orders 7 warships, according to our team, carrying 4,500 military personnel to waters of the Venezuela. Axios reported that earlier, and I also shared this information, plus 3 guided missile destroyers. At least 1 attack submarine were also deployed towards the Venezuela. Publication claims even close advisors of Trump are not sure whether U.S. going to get engaged in a drug enforcement operation or coup d'etat operation. All this talk about drugs in connection on Venezuela, by the way, is of course pretext to launch attack on the country, on Venezuela, and to conduct regime change. There can be no doubts about it. If White House was serious about fighting drug trafficking, then, well, they should go to Langley, by the way, because CIA actually is a main drug trafficker in this world. And for decades and decades and decades, right? When it comes to drug trafficking, when it comes to weapons trafficking, CIA is a main villain there, right? And so therefore, all this talk about Venezuela being a part of drug cartels and stuff and drug operations is just a justification of assault on Venezuela. And I don't think it will end well, by the way. I don't think it will end well for U.S. I don't know how much attention U.S. citizens are paying to these developments, but I don't think they want their militaries now to go to war in Venezuela and die somewhere in the freaking jungles, man, in scores, right? But yet again, if propaganda, if MSM will brainwash majority again and say that, well, Venezuela is now, should be our number one enemy, and we have to not necessarily fight with them and go do some war, majority might even support that, because unfortunately propaganda does works, man. Propaganda does works. And the press spokesman of the U.S. president, Lewitt, was asked about this, and well, she did not say that U.S. will not attack Venezuela. She was directly asked about it, and let's listen to her.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. The military deployment that President Trump has sent to the Caribbean Sea close to the shores with Venezuela is massive. It's much more that is needed to simply counter narcotics operations. Is President Trump considering launching military strikes to military installments or facilities in Venezuelan soil?
I won't get ahead of the president with respect to any military action or questions about that ever. But what I will tell you is that many Caribbean nations and many nations in the region have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. And as I've said from this podium before, the Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country and to protect citizens from those deadly poisons. Reagan.
So you see, dear friends, I mean, there is a full-on assault on Venezuela. I mean, I don't know why either her or her boss thinks that it's up to them to decide who is and who is not legit president of Venezuela. Last time I checked, it was up to Venezuelan people, right? And they voted for that guy, Maduro. That's it, man, right? So it's not up to US to decide. But nevertheless, we'll understand, by the way, we'll understand that US wants to recolonize all the countries in Latin America that gained at least some independence from US in past decades, while US was mainly focused on all sorts of wars in the Middle East and other regions, right? And that's what is happening. They're going to start with Venezuela, then they're going to attack Cuba. I'm quite sure about it, and Havana and people of Cuba should get prepared, by the way. Colombia, not going to have a good time, by the way, with US. I'm quite sure Washington will attack Brazil too. I'm quite sure they will attack Brazil too, by the way. They will try to do some regime change in Brazil. And when I said attack, I don't mean that they're going to militarily attack Brazil. No, but they will definitely use their assets to bring to power loyalists, right? That will embrace colonial, U.S. empire and embrace to become basically colony of the U.S., right? And they do have allies, by the way, in Brazil and in many other countries, in Colombia too, of course, and just everywhere, right? So Venezuela is just the beginning, and clearly, I mean, she did not say that there's gonna be no military action, right? So probably there's gonna be some military action, and their friends, Venezuelans, are preparing. I'm not quite sure that Venezuelan military is that strong or capable, but yet again, if spirit is there, by the way, if people of Venezuela, even ones that are opposing the Maduro's government, and they do have reasons not to be happy with the work that government does, right? But nevertheless, if public is absolutely against the recolonization of the Venezuela, then they will give a fight, by the way. They will fight for the independence of their country, and in that case, U.S. military is going to have a definitely hard time, right? And they are preparing, by the way. They are preparing. Look
Just
at this
moments
video.
ago, actually, a federal appeals.
This is other one. That's the video, Bob.
Luego de 20 días continuos de anuncios, amenazas, guerra psicológica, luego de 20 días de asedio contra la nación venezolana, hoy estamos más fuertes que ayer. Hoy estamos más preparados para defender la paz, la soberanía y la integridad territorial que ayer.
Yet again, dear friends, I'm no military expert. I don't know what actual capabilities Venezuelan militaries have. Are they good or well prepared or not? But yet again, if spirit is there, if people in general don't want Venezuela to be recolonized, then they will give a fight. They will give a fight, and US would not be able to succeed. Even though there is a tremendous difference, isn't it, in power between US and Venezuela. So it all depends on people, and me personally, I'm not going to pretend that I know what the mood in society in Venezuela is, right? So I don't have stats on that. I don't have any studies on that. So therefore, let's see. By the way, I mean, hopefully, US will not attack Venezuela, right? And back off. But if they will, then it will all come down to people of Venezuela. if they are so sick and tired of their own government that they will embrace US recolonization, that's one topic. In that case, US will succeed fast. But if people of Venezuela are going to fight, then US would not be able to succeed. And Venezuela do have some quite capable weapon systems, by the way. I believe Venezuelan Air Force has Su-30s, by the way, and those planes are capable ones, right? And if correctly used by profis, they can dealt some very significant damage to U.S. Navy vessels that are now approaching Venezuela's coast. So Venezuela does have some weapons to fight back, for sure. And dear friends, let me continue with some other news too. As I said, still there is stuff to report about, and some economical block now. Towards the end of the news segment, RIA Novosti is reporting that according to Russian ambassador in China, in 2024 alone, 1.1 million Chinese cars were imported in Russia by Russian customers, Russian businesses, worth 21 billion US dollars, by the way. This was stated by Russian ambassador to China, Igor Margulov, in his interview with RIA Novosti. So we have a quote here: Russia is indeed one of the largest buyers of automotive equipment from China. In 2024, 1.1 million Chinese vehicles worth about $21 billion were imported into our country, diplomat said. Margulov noted that their model range is quite diverse. According to the ambassador, it will continue to expand depending on the preferences of the Russian customers and consumers. And by the way, I mean, 1.1 million cars, right? This is cars. These are sales, by the way, that Western companies lost. Because I remind you, dear friends, because before all this sanction war against Russia began, there was Chinese cars in Russia, of course, but just here and there you would be able to spot some Chinese cars. Now, I mean, it's everywhere. Chinese cars are literally everywhere, right? A lot of it. And this 21 billion, by the way, is the money that Western companies lost, right? Western car manufacturers, especially European ones, by the way. BMW or BMW, as Germans say, Mercedes, Volkswagen, Opel, and rest. It's a German, first of all, car manufacturers. Then Italian and French, by the way, that lost these 21 billion. And even more, right? No wonder practically all European car manufacturers are experiencing difficulties, isn't it? And shutting down the factories all over the Europe. Because, they are losing quite a lot of money while obeying criminal orders from the governments and betraying Russian customers, right? While leaving Russian market. So quite interesting numbers here, isn't it, dear friends? In 2024, 1.1 million. I guess in this year, this number will be the same or maybe even more, even higher, right? RTs are also reporting, dear friends, that, India is still under attack, by the way, big time. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro continues to attack India, continues to insult India, calling this proxy war that West is waging against Russia Modi's war, which is insane to say, right? And it's not just the White House, not just US leadership that attacks India, but also, and among US officials that attacking Russia, there is, of course, Lindsey Graham too, by the way, although he's threatening China and Brazil too, not just India. But there is also Europe, right? Globalist controlled Europe, and Kaja Kallas, so-called top diplomat of EU, is actually calling on the members of the EU to introduce secondary sanctions on Russian oil suppliers, similar to American duties. So basically, Brussels, Kaja Kallas, and that is Brussels, isn't it? They are calling on European states to introduce tariffs on India too, as US did, and also potentially on other, China maybe also. I don't know. And this is going to be also, by the way, I mean, tremendously harming for European economies, isn't it? But at this point, we're not going to be surprised by any crazy decision that's going to come out from European capitals that will harm, first of all, their own people, their own economies, because that's what they do year-on-year terms, right? For how long now? And that's why leading economies in Europe are in a recession. That's it. So probably, they will actually go ahead and introduce some sanctions or tariffs against China, India, maybe Brazil, some other countries. But first, before they will go ahead and do that, European countries themselves should stop buying Russian energy. And it's not just Hungary, by the way, and Slovakia. I believe this year, France is the biggest buyer of Russian LNG. You might be surprised, but France is, based on stats that I read a couple of days ago, it is France, if I remember correctly, that is a leading country when it comes to Russian LNG purchases, and they already brought LNG in past 6-7 months, by the way, worth some $700 million or 700 million euros. That's the numbers that I remember. Maybe not be, maybe this is not like 7 billion or 10 billion, but still, by the way, France is a leading country in EU, extremely hostile to Russia, and still continues to buy Russian LNG, right? So before introducing secondary tariffs on India or China or other Russian allies and friends, European countries should themselves stop buying Russian stuff. It would be logical, isn't it? And dear friends, a few more news that, tariffs itself may be ruled to be illegal. And that was exactly the ruling of appeals court in US, that majority of tariffs are illegal. Although, by the way, Trump's administration has a time until October 14th for Supreme Court appeal, right? So it's not final decision, but yet again, when appeals court says Trump did not have a mandate to introduce these tariffs, that is quite telling. So it well turned out, by the way, that all these tariffs actually are some illegal stuff that Trump is doing, and this might be yet another reason for impeachment, by the way. If he's taking actions beyond his presidential mandate, then that's he's breaking law there, isn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but no president can go beyond whatever rights he has as a president. And Trump did go beyond his mandate with this, with vast majority of tariffs, according to U.S. appeals court. So let me give you a short video on that, dear friends. And this is Fox News, from where I want to give you this a short clip.
President Trump's tariffs are illegal. The court is saying the president exceeded his authority in imposing those levies. There's a catch, though, in this ruling. Correspondent David Spunt has details tonight, breaking just minutes ago. Good evening, David.
Brett, good evening. The catch is that the tariffs can stay in place until October 14th. That's when the mandate from the circuit court, the federal circuit court appeals decision actually kicks in. This was a 127-page decision that just came down within the last 30 minutes. We're reading it, but it finds that most of the president's tariffs are unconstitutional. This was published to the on public docket, as I said, within the last few minutes. Now, the panel found that the tariffs on nearly every country were not authorized, Brett, by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and therefore are illegal. The court writing today unanimously, the statute bestows significant authority on the president to undertake a number of actions in response to a declared national emergency. But none of these actions explicitly include the power to impose tariffs, duties, or the like, or the power to tax. Now, arguments were recently held in Washington, D.C. This gives the administration the green light to go directly here to the U.S. Supreme Court, which we expect to happen very soon. We've not yet heard from the White House, but we are expecting something this hour.
So you hear yourself, dear friends, tariffs are illegal according to U.S. According to U.S. court. But yet again, this is not the final decision. Trump still has a time, his administration, to challenge this decision. But yet again, probably, I'm inclined to believe that Trump did not really have constitutional rights to do these tariffs, by the way. Yet again, I'm not an expert in U.S. Constitution, in U.S. law, so let the judges decide, right? But it is nevertheless interesting stuff there, isn't it? And a few more news, dear friends, before I end news segment. And well, while European officials or US officials are targeting Modi, targeting India with tariffs, with aggression, Modi himself, by the way, is seems like standing stronger. Indian leadership is standing strong. They are not intending to bow down to Washington, to Western pressure, and exactly opposite is happening. Modi already arrived, by the way, in China, and he will met with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He will met with the Russian president Vladimir Putin. I believe he will met with the other leaders of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and I'm quite sure, by the way, that not just this organization members, but also BRICS members will stand stronger with India, and this is, I think, this is a first clear indicator that you may disagree with me, but in economical field, by the way, Western world is no longer dominant force, and India's resilience is clearly demonstrating that, isn't it? Some might argue, well, Russia already demonstrated this, and it is true, by the way. But we are engaged in a proxy war, right? And we don't really have much choice. India had a choice, right? And they decided to stand strong. And well done, by the way, well done. So exactly opposite reaction from what Washington was expecting, I guess. I don't know. Also, dear friends, let me share with you this information. I think this is also important, especially because the Western propaganda loves to talk about how Russia is a gas station and that kind of stuff, isn't it? Still to nowadays, by the way, Western propaganda, Western politicians, public figures are claiming that Russia is a gas station. It has no economy, nothing, just oil, gas. That's it, right? That's the Western narrative. And unfortunately, many people actually believe in this crap. Now, let me give you actual numbers, by the way, and actual information, right? Well, first, let me share with you information about deficit of the Russian budget, federal budget. In first half of the year, number is 3.4%, which is a big number, obviously. But on year-on-year terms, towards the end of this year, this number will decrease to 1.6% of the GDP. This 1.6% is something that can be dealt with, right? And a number may actually be even less than that, because I think central bank and finance ministry will do something to weaken the ruble a little bit, because despite drop in central bank's interest rate last month, it did not work much. It did not work much. Russian ruble continues to be just too strong, right? Which is harming actually Russian economy. And therefore, I think, and unfortunately, this month I was expecting another cut from central bank for another 2 points, but it did not happen in August. I don't know why, but it did not happen. And but nevertheless, I think in September there will be another cut in 2%, and maybe in follow-up months we will also see cuts before end of this year that will combine to like 3 to 4%. So towards the end of the year, interest rate might be 14%, 15%, or maybe less compared to current. It's 18 now, isn't it, or something, which is quite high still. And so ruble, if there will be cuts in interest rates, and also central bank's interest rates, and finance ministry will also do some stuff to stimulate spending, right? Maybe ruble will lose its strength somehow, because this is not good what is happening right now for exporter companies and for federal budget, because you understand all this Russian economy is an export-oriented economy, right? So Russian businesses make a lot of foreign currencies, and when they have to pay taxes, they are exchanging these foreign currencies in rubles, right? And paying taxes in rubles. So if ruble is strong, then they are paying lesser rubles as taxes. If ruble is weaker, then they are, when they pay taxes, there are more rubles that entering the budget, right? So there is direct correlation there. And so, yes, I think towards the end of this year, central bank and finance ministry will weaken ruble towards the levels of, I don't know, maybe 90 rubles for a dollar, 100 rubles for a dollar. That will be still too strong for likes of exporter companies and some economical experts, but nevertheless, that will give that will be helpful for budget, right, to decrease the deficit. But nevertheless, 1.6% is something that we can deal with. Let me give you numbers, even more interesting numbers now. So, according to a preliminary estimate published by the Ministry of Finance in July, the budget deficit in the first half of the 2025 amounted to 3.6 trillion rubles, or 1.7% of the GDP, with their deficit planned by their budget law taking into account their spring amendments for 2025 being 3.7, almost 3.8 trillion rubles, or 1.7% of GDP. The Ministry of Finance estimated budget revenues in January-June at 17.585 trillion rubles, an increase of 2.8% compared to the same indicator in 2024, and their expenditures at 21.278 trillion rubles. The ministry linked their current level of the budget deficit mainly to advance their financing of their expenditures in January, as well as a decrease in oil and gas revenues. It was reported that non-oil and this is, just pay attention, dear friends, please. This is very important on the topic of how much gas station Russia is. It was reported that non-oil and gas revenues in January-June, in the first 6 months, by the way, amounted to 12.85 trillion rubles, an increase of 12.7% year-on-year terms, right? Oil and gas revenues were 4.7 trillion rubles, decrease of 16.9%, mainly due to decrease in the average prices of oil. According to data published by the Federal Treasury in August, the federal budget deficit in January-June amounted to 4.449 billion rubles, with revenues of 16.537 billion rubles, and and expenditures of 20,980 billion rubles. So, by the way, this is all good, but look at the numbers there. So it was reported that oil and gas revenues in January-June amounted to 12.85 trillion rubles, increase on 12%, which is, by the way, I believe, 73% of their overall income. So according to head of the government, budget revenues amounted to 17.5 trillion rubles, exceeding the same indicator of their previous year and forecast values. The share of non-oil and gas revenues already accounted for about 73%. 73%. The role of those sectors where the added value is higher than in the extraction of raw materials is expanding. So this number is increasing, right? It's already 73%. Before end of this year, by the way, it will reach 75, 80%. And now you tell me, how Russia is a gas station if 75, 73, 75, up to 80% of revenues are from non-oil and gas sectors? Someone should tell these numbers, by the way, to those morons in Western public field, in Western so-called political class and the media that are loving to push this false narrative that Russia is a gas station. They only have oil and gas and blah, blah, blah. Really? 73% already revenues this year, by the way, is from non-oil and gas sectors. And yet again, this number will reach most likely 80%. And that's what I was talking about constantly, right? That oil and gas revenues in Russian budget are about 20%, man. The rest is other sectors. It is what it is. So you have numbers now, by the way, on that, right? And well, that's it. And dear friends, when it comes to Russian GDP growth, Silvanov, I reported about it in previous updates that Finance Minister Silvanov is forecasting 1.5% growth of Russian GDP in 2025, which is very conservative estimate in my personal opinion. I think my initial estimate of 3.54% was too optimistic, overly optimistic. Okay, I have to acknowledge that. But I think this year Russian economy will grow at least 2.5%, from 2 to 2.5%. Let's see. I have good reasons to believe that this forecast of mine will be correct, because traditionally central bank and the finance ministry are immensely conservative, by the way, immensely conservative. They always say very conservative data, and in reality, we actually always have better numbers. That's what happens on year-on-year terms. So therefore, I have no reason not to believe that actual growth of Russian economy will be much higher than 1.5%, which is, by the way, still tremendously more than leading European economies, for example, that are not growing at all. They are in a recession. That's it. So, okay, this is it for a news segment, dear friends. Hopefully, you did find it informative and useful. And there was 2 super chat during the stream on Rumble, dear friends. And let me highlight this super chat. I remind you, dear friends, that you can donate through PayPal if you like my work, and if you want to support, you can donate through this project through PayPal, through Boosty platforms. You can subscribe to my Patreon page. That will be also a great support, of course. And please consider to subscribe to my Patreon. By the way, this project to be in a safe place, we need to, our community needs to double there. On Patreon, you can choose your level of monthly support, by the way. It starts from $5, and then it's up to you, by the way. Absolutely. And you can terminate your subscription also anytime you want. So it's just a good way. It's very helpful. This Patreon and Boosty pages that I have are very helpful to know approximate amount of funds that I can rely on, right? While with donations, you just never know. Today there might be donations, tomorrow no, day after maybe some, and day after now. But Patreon and Boosty allows me to have at least some understanding of funds that I can rely on. So very important. So please consider to join our community on Patreon and Boosty. Links, of course, are under this video in the description box and will be in the pinned comment. And let me now highlight, dear friends, let me highlight super chat from Rumble. Iofi, thank you very much for your $50 donation and the super chat on Rumble. Comment from Iofi is, thank you, Levan. They're only good fascist banderites, Nazis, geo-supremacist is a dead one. Bravo, armed forces of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much. I agree with you, by the way. Only good Nazis are dead Nazis. That's it. I'm on the same page with you there. Thank you very much for your generous donation. Truly grateful. And thank you very much for your comment. And also there was the friend's commentary, super chatter from Viper. Thank you very much, Viper, for your $50 donation. I appreciate your support. Thank you. And question from Viper is, did you know Trump supported Dan Bongino owns 50% of Rumble? He is deputy director of FBI. I mean, seriously? Bongino owns 50% of Rumble. I did not know that. Wow. And I know he is deputy of Patel. Wow, man, I did not know that. That's quite interesting. That's quite interesting. I mean, he was a big voice, by the way, Bongino, in before appointment in FBI, isn't it? In a conservative field, he was a very big voice, right? Very popular voice. But nevertheless, I did not know that he owned, 50% of Rumble. Is this actual, man? Wow. That's interesting. That's interesting. I was thinking that Rumble was, no one side, no one person or one group had their dominance on in Rumble while owning a big percentage of the company. But it seems like, well, FBI indirectly, by the way, owns Rumble. That's quite something. I did not know this. Thank you for your information, Viper, and thank you very much for your generous donation. Thank you. And your friends, I will join now. I will join community chat, and of course, if there will be any super chat or donation through, I'm gonna add this to tomorrow's. I'm gonna count these donations for tomorrow's fundraising. Of course, so quite a good start there. Quite a good starter. And for next week, by the way. And I'm scrolling now, dear friends, in the chat. Hello, everyone. French Flanagan, Lina Thomason, Alexander G, Nidish Kumar, John Dutchman, Michael Kennedy is here. Hello, everyone. Barner Accounter is here. Barney, also very generous supporter of the project. Svetlana Vladimirovna is here. Thank you all, dear friends, for being here, for your time and attention. Z12IT is here, our friend from Italy. Buongiorno is a good morning, isn't it? How you say good afternoon in Italian? I don't know. I only know buongiorno. Oh, shame. Unfortunately, I don't know that many languages. I only know like 4. And that's it. So I'm scrolling, dear friends. If I see a question or the comment directed to me, of course, I will react on it. I'm alone at home right now. my wife and kids are in a city for some business, and my wife sent me these screenshots of super chat earlier, and I don't know if she is not able to monitor live stream. Then I might not be able to see super chat, by the way. And if I miss your super chatter, then I will definitely pay attention to it in tomorrow's stream, dear friends. So I'm not gonna ignore it for sure. And well, let's continue scrolling through questions. It's so great to see, by the way, you are communicating. It's great when I see active chat. Question from Gracie Knoll: does NATO promote security or insecurity? That's a good question, isn't it? That's a good question. Based on their propaganda and constant whining about Russia attacking and Russia doing this and that, and how they're going to spend more and how they're going to do this and that, one might assume that, what you are whining about, why you are intimidating people and creating this insecurity in the people. So it is a good question, isn't it? And many people probably being terrified in Europe, in the Western world, right? With this constant non-stop propaganda, false propaganda of the West that Russia is going to attack today or tomorrow or day after. No, man, Russia not going to attack. If not provoke, Moscow will not even think about conducting any military operation against anybody. It's just, that's how Russia operates, by the way, right? If provoked, if attacked, then that's a whole different story. But if not provoked, there is no way Russia going to even consider attacking anyone, anywhere, any country. Why would we? There is so much stuff to do, by the way, No one thinks about wars here. Question from Maria Palmer: Levan, have you heard that Israel is now going after Cyprus as a part of its Great Israel Project? This entitled genociders never stop to do they? Oh, they not. That's why I said, Maria, unfortunately, the situation is so bad. Reality on the ground is so bad that only way forward is world community to get together and basically demilitarize this fascist entity that modern Israel is, and then to denazify the Israelis that were indoctrinated in this sickening ideology that they are some God-chosen people that are, have rights on everything, and everyone else is not even humans, right? They have to undergo the denazification process for sure, and this only can be done if world community will get together and stop this fascist entity Israel and demilitarize it. This is the only way Middle East can actually have a peace in the future. And I did not know that they are going after Cyprus too. They think Cyprus also is a part of a greater Israel. Psychopaths, man. What can I say? What can I say, man? This is insane. And it is a shame of humanity, by the way, that we are so weak as a world community that we were unable to stop these genocidal maniacs from committing these horrendous crimes against humanity that they do on a daily basis, by the way. Thank you for your comment, Maria. Svetlana Vladimirovna is commenting: I don't know how Levan used Rumble. Every time I tried to access Ether, I am unable to do so. I think it blocked in Russia. you cannot access Rumble without VPN. You cannot access YouTube without VPN. I'm using VPN whenever I'm on Rumble or on YouTube. And Kaspersky VPN works, by the way. For example, other VPNs work too. I mean, there's quite a lot of those VPNs, but I know for sure that Kaspersky VPN does works and opens both Rumble and YouTube. And I'm streaming with VPN, by the way. High-speed internet allows you, even though when you are using VPN, internet speed drops significantly, but it's still enough. It's still enough to stream on both platforms, on both channels simultaneously on YouTube and Rumble. So you need to have a VPN to access Rumble, and then you have to have an account to comment there or anything, to do anything there. Basically, it's like YouTube. If you don't have a comment account, you cannot like video, you cannot comment, you cannot send super chat, and in many ways it does look, it operates like YouTube, but it's also different than a YouTube. And I hope there will be more and more attempts to create an alternative to the YouTube, because unfortunately YouTube is tremendously aggressive towards independent creators, especially ones that are from Russia. Why my channel is in shadow ban, by the way. Why my videos are struggling to reach wider audience. Why my videos are not showing in recommendations as other videos do from other countries. I don't know. Even members of our community, by the way, were rarely receiving notifications that I have published a video. So how many times I have seen comment when a member of community is telling, Levan, I received notification first time in last 3 months or 5 months, that kind of stuff. Why is this? Why YouTube is so unjust? But yet again, they are monopoly. What are you going to do about it, right? I'm scrolling there, friends, sir. Sorry if I miss your question. My apologies, sir. In that case, I'm scrolling faster. Our live stream is already 2 hours, by the way, and there are almost 3 minutes. So I will scroll fast, and if I don't see, if I did not spot a question, then I will end stream on that. It's a Saturday, after all. And I hope you will join tomorrow's big community chatter and fundraising stream. Hopefully it will work out good. I see a question from Nidish Kumar. Levan, I think within 2 months, Balkans conflict will start. My prediction, what do you think? Unfortunately, I mean, there is a very high risk, isn't it? I don't know, I mean, in what time, but unfortunately, there is a very high risk that we're gonna see civil war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and there is a high risk that Croatia and Serbia might get involved one way or another too. So there might be yet again big war in the Balkans, and that's what globalists are pushing for, basically. They want to crush Serbian people. They want to crush spirit of the Serbian people. That's what they want. And hopefully they would not be successful. And my support goes for Serbian people, by the way, undoubtedly. So, I mean, there is a high risk, Nidish Kumar, I understand. Time, I don't know. I don't know how long it will take before globalists will provoke war there, but they are clearly pushing towards that, isn't it? Everything they do in regards to Republika Srpska, by the way, in regards to Serbian leadership, in regards to Bosnia and Herzegovina and internal politics and the changes indicates that they are pushing for war there, for massive escalation, and their main goal is to crush Serbian people. Will of Serbian people to stand strong. They want to crush spirit of the Serbs. And they're not going to succeed, by the way. They're not going to succeed. I mean, Serbians never surrendered. They were fighting always, right? They are well known in history as people with a tremendous will to fight and defend their motherland. And so, you know, Serbian, I believe, I mean, correct me, dear friends, if I'm wrong, but I believe among Orthodox churches, only Serbian Orthodox Church priests were allowed to carry weapons. Serbian people were engaged in wars constantly, you know, against Ottoman Empire and their, you know, all sorts of enemies. And Serbian Orthodox Church priests were actually authorized to have weapons to fight and defend themselves and the people. So quite unique nuance there. I don't think any priests of any other Orthodox churches, and all Orthodox churches are the sister churches, by the way, right? I don't think any other Orthodox churches or priests had such permission. But yet again, I'm not a theologist, by the way, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. Nidish Kumar is also asking, Lvov, do you think West is behind the severe unrest in Indonesia suddenly? I think so. Yes, they must be. First of all, whenever there is a massive unrest, if you trace back all the details, then you will find some presence of the Western interests there, Western influence. And we should keep in mind that Indonesia, by the way, is like 2 million plus people, almost 300 million economy, right? And Indonesia, Jakarta was shifting fast towards the BRICS, right? And this makes globalists, of course, unhappy. This makes Western elites unhappy, and I'm not going to be surprised if we will find out that it's actually the Western secret services, their influence, that sparked this unrest. I have seen some videos, by the way. It's some hell has broke in some parts, right there. Hopefully, you know, law enforcement agencies will be able to calm things down and then minimize or completely avoid any further casualties and the destruction. But I think West should be part of it. I was surprised to hear that there is unrest in Jakarta and in other parts too, I believe, because, I mean, why? This suddenly, you know, I don't know. So I think West will have something to do with it. And there was a donation on super chat, dear friends. Let me highlight her. Dwalder, thank you very much for your $20 donation. And comment from Dwalder, and the super chat comment from Dwalder on Rumble is that, Levon, I just joined you on Patreon. I agree with you 100% on Israel. Thank you very much, Dwalder, for your comment, for your generous donation, and for joining our Patreon community. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hopefully, more members of our community, our bigger community on YouTube and Rumble, will join our tiny communities on Patreon or Boosty. And on my part, I will definitely try my best to publish exclusive content on Patreon and Boosty channels on regular basis. I want to do it every weekday, by the way, from Monday to Friday. And this week I managed to do it, and hopefully I will manage to do it always. I mean, let's see. It's time consuming to make these programs. It's time consuming, isn't it? Especially when you are doing walk and talk type of videos, as I do quite often on Rumble. So you have to go somewhere. It takes time. You have to make video there. It does takes time. Then you have to come back home. Also time you have to upload this video, and sometimes this upload takes tremendous time, by the way. There are days when platforms experiencing some problems, internet might be slow or something, and it is a time consuming. For a half an hour video you might spend 3 hours, by the way, or sometimes even more, right? It depends where you, in which part of the city you are actually filming, and then how fast you will manage to come back and upload. But nevertheless, I'm going to try my best to have more and more extra content, exclusive content, as my thank to all of you, dear friends, that are subscribed to my Patreon and Boost pages. So thank you very much, Walder. Truly grateful. Thank you. And dear friends, what do you think if I will end the live stream on that? Thank you all for your attention, for your time, dear friends, this Saturday afternoon by Moscow time, already evening, by the way. It's 6:12 in the evening. Thank you all for being here, for your attention, for your support. Hopefully you did like the video, our conversation, and our news segment. And if so, dear friends, please don't forget to like the video if you have not already. And if you are watching this video in recording after stream answer in few hours time, or maybe tomorrow, please leave some commentary in the comment section. These likes and comments might help to deal with the tremendously aggressive algorithm and reach wider audience. And so, yes, have a wonderful day, dear friends. A great weekend, and see you tomorrow. Thank you all.